Okay. So, let's carry on. And so the Buddha to be, he has decided that he wants to find a solution to these problems, the freedom from all of these things. And then he says that we have come to the last paragraph here of this part of this extract of the sutta. Sometime later was still black-haired, blessed with youth, in the prime of life. Though my mother and father wished otherwise, weeping with tearful faces, I shaved off my hair and beard, dressed in ochre robes, and went forth from the lay life to homelessness. The Buddha to be becomes a monk. This is what this is about. So you can see here you can see like the Noble Eightfold Path kind of working. Yeah, the first thing is right view. Right view is understanding the nature of life, understanding the dukkha, understanding that there must be some alternative. Yeah, this is the right view arising. Yeah, and then from that right view comes samma sankappa, deciding which is the right intention or the right thought, deciding to become a monk. Yeah, this is one way of thinking about samma sankappa, is the renunciation. Of course, part of that is also the other aspects of the samma sankappa, the overcoming of ill will and the overcoming of harmfulness, also part of that. So you can see here the sequence, and this is why, one of the reasons why this is so interesting, because this is the right view of the Buddha to be. And if this is what made the Buddha to be practice the spiritual life, we should reflect in the same way to strengthen our right view. Right view is so simple. Yeah, it's such a simple thing. People often think, oh, Buddhism so hard to do, so complicated, I can't understand dependent origination, or it's just so mind-boggling. Don't need to forget about all of that. Understand this. Understand you're going to die, but understand that deeply. That is far more important. This is what kind of makes you practice this path. You don't need to understand all the intricacies and of dependent origination, vijnana, paccaya, nama, rupa. Oh, what does that mean? I don't understand. Does that mean I'm not a good Buddhist or whatever? No, that's not really what it means. So come back to the simple things on the path. They are the most powerful things. The kind of the people who sit in an armchair and smoke their pipe and they kind of think about dependent origination, they're the ones who don't really get anywhere, because they're too, it's all about thinking, it's not about practice. And so he goes forth, and you will see that he says here that while he was still black-haired youth, yeah, so I can just see a blur without my glasses, black-haired youth in the prime of life. And so the idea, you go forth while you are young. This is the ideal. When you still have the energy, when you still have the mental clarity and the ability to do things. Yeah. So when you're the younger you are, when you go forth, the greater the chances are you will actually go a long way on this path. Yeah. This needs that clarity from early on. And the Dhamma is for everyone. Doesn't matter what age you are. It's just that when you are younger, there's more opportunities because you have more life ahead of you and you are more vigorous and you have more ability to do things. And this is what the Buddha to be did as well, going forth while he was still young. So if you have a child or a young person who wants to go forth, then encourage them. Yeah, don't say, oh no, this is too dangerous, or no, you have to look after the family, or the family needs you, or whatever. Yeah, so I would say if you are if someone is a really good parent, if the child does not want to go forth, you should still encourage them to go forth. Yeah, that's kind of the right way. Yeah, usually it's the opposite, but that's actually the right way of thinking. Yeah. And sometimes people think, I know this is a very common thought everywhere, most places in most Buddhist countries around the world, is that you have kind of a number of sons and daughters, and if anyone is going to go forth, it's like the dum-dum, the one who doesn't really understand, can't do well at school. Okay, you can go forth because you are kind of useless anyway, so you can become a become a monk or a nun. Actually, it's the other way around. Yeah, it's the dum-dum. They should stay and do the work. Yeah, the smart one, they should become a monk or a nun because they can actually do something beneficial for the world, something really beneficial. You think that you're going to do something beneficial if you are a doctor or whatever. You can, and it's wonderful to be a doctor or a nurse or a teacher or do these beautiful occupations in the world. But far more powerful if you can become a good monk or nun. Imagine Ajahn, someone like Ajahn Brahm, the amount of good that he has done for the world. It's just enormous. And so, if you have a daughter or son who becomes a good monastic, well, that is what you should really be proud of. That is something to really kind of, and if no one else in the world understands what's going on, that's okay. Forget about what other people think. Who cares anyway? That's kind of irrelevant. Otherwise, we're allowing ourselves to be locked in place by other people's opinions. We become stupid because we allow other people to guide our lives through their praise and blame. And that is such a terrible way to live. You can never live with integrity, never live fully if you do that. So the Buddha goes forth in the prime of life, is the best time to go forth. Though my mother and father wished otherwise, crying, weeping with tearful faces. The Buddha did not leave in the middle of the night, riding off on the horse Kantaka, jumping over the walls of Kapilavatthu. That's not what happened. The Buddha had a discussion with his parents. He said, I want to go forth. What do you think? Please don't go forth. They said, no. Even the Buddha's parents, they would like him to go forth. Don't. You can imagine if you have the Buddha as a son, a probably very impressive son. Very bright, intelligent, wise, all of these kind of beautiful qualities. You certainly don't want that son to go forth. So they were against it. But the Buddha knew what he had to do, so he probably insisted. And then he would have made sure that his wife and child, they were looked after because they lived in large families, so they would have been looked after. That is the real story. That is what it is in the sutta. So whereas the other story we normally hear is just mythology that we hear later on. And then he shaves off his hair and beard. He was a real monk. He looked like a monk. He puts on the ochre robes. So the Buddha looks like a monk. This is kind of an important point here as well that you see straight away. And then he goes forth from the home life to homelessness. So this is here how he then starts, and goes out on his quest into the world to seek what seems almost impossible to seek. And of course the reason why the Buddha could seek for these things, the solution to death, was because there was an existing culture where people were already doing these kind of things. If I was living in Australia and I said to some Australian people, I'm just going to go off into the bush and seek the solution to death, they would lock you up, right? You were gone mad, so you're going to kind of lock you up. But in India, this was acceptable thing to do, which is kind of, again, says something about that society, which is very interesting. So then the Buddha goes forth, becomes a monk, and eventually, of course, he achieves this awakening, after a lot of dead ends, a lot of wrong turns. Eventually, he's able to find the way forward. And one of those beautiful points in the Buddha's life, that was a real turnaround point. It's a very interesting point. When it comes to kind of, he has tried everything, he has been starving himself to the point where he's about to die. And he says, I couldn't go any further. If I went further, I would die. Previously, he has gone the path of the deep meditations. He realized, actually, it doesn't lead to the end of samsara. It doesn't lead to the end of being reborn. It just leads to a higher kind of rebirth. And so he realized, well, these two are dead ends, and the household life is also a dead end. Everything is a dead end. Those are the very powerful moments in life, are the moments when you don't know. What now? When you are stuck, you don't know what to do next. It's the same thing in your meditation. Suddenly the meditation doesn't work anymore, or your spiritual path seems to be blocked. Why? Those are powerful moments of insight. If you are going to be radically honest with yourself and ask yourself, what is the real reason why I'm not making progress? It's an incredible opportunity to see some truth about yourself that is blocking you from being able to make progress. This is exactly what the Buddha is saying. Yeah, the Buddha to be, not the Buddha yet. And he is stuck. Yeah, nothing is working. What to do? And that is when the Buddha remembers his childhood experience of samadhi, of ajahn, sitting under the jambu tree, the rose apple tree, or the black plum tree. I recently discovered that jambu, not sure if it is a rose apple or black plum. Everyone thinks it's rose apple, right? But I thought maybe that's not actually true. Anyway, it's kind of irrelevant, but it's one of those strange things, right? That all the things we think are true turn out to be maybe not true after all. It's kind of, the life is often like that. You have to be eternally flexible, eternally open to new ideas. But not too many new ideas. It has to be kind of that balance. If it's open to too many new ideas, also you lose your footing. You don't know what to do anymore. So it's kind of a balance. So the Buddha remembers that experience. And then he thinks, could that be the path to awakening? And then he asks the question, why am I afraid of that happiness? The happiness that has nothing to do with sensual pleasures. That's what he thinks at this particular point. And you can see that the Buddha the Buddha to be has been afraid of happiness because he thought that happiness is a place where you can get stuck, something you get attached to. And now, for the first time in his life, does he realize, does he understand that there are different kinds of happiness, and only some kinds of happiness are a danger. They cause you to get stuck. Whereas other kinds of happiness, they are actually the right way forward. So one of the most important things we do on the Buddhist path is to distinguish between different kinds of happiness. The ones that are bad, that block us, and the good kinds of happiness that actually lead us onwards and lead us forward. So in Buddhism, if you know happiness properly, happiness leads to more happiness. Yeah, one kind of happiness leads to deeper kind of happiness, leading to a deeper kind of happiness, leading to the supreme happiness, which is Nibbana itself, down the track. Yeah. So then he turns around, and then he starts meditating in this profound way. Yeah, he achieved these profound jhana states. The jhana states is the last factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, and so they include the other aspects of the Noble Path with them. Yeah, it's important to understand that when you practice the jhanas of deep samadhi, actually you're practicing all the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path together, because they come together in those jhanas. You wouldn't be able to achieve a jhana if you had wrong intention, if you didn't live morally, if you didn't have right effort, if you hadn't sati, mindfulness. All of these things must exist for jhana to become possible. So when the Buddha says this, actually all the factors are there, except one. Right view is not 100% right yet. Yeah, the right view is, he's building up right view, is becoming more and more right, yeah, as you're going along, and that's what enables him to achieve these deep meditations. But it's not there 100% yet. So then he uses those jhana experiences to remember his past lives, to understand the laws of karma, how the cycle of existence comes about, how rebirth comes about. This is his wisdom becoming more and more powerful, his right view becoming more and more right. Yeah? And then, based on all that information together enables him then to let go completely of the sense of self, because that is the hard part. Yeah? The sense of self is the really difficult one, because it is so dear to us and so close to us. And being able to let that go completely, that is why this is so difficult to achieve awakening. And then when he does that, then he becomes an arahant, he becomes a Buddha. So that is how that path then finishes off all the way to the end. And then he becomes the Buddha. And when he becomes the Buddha, then what does he do then? Well, then he thinks, oh yeah, this was really difficult. This was really hard. Should I teach anyone else, or should I not teach anyone else? Yeah, will they understand? Probably not. Too profound. Yeah, no one will understand. So why should I kind of spend so much time and effort when no one will understand anyway? What's the point? Let me go and chill instead. He doesn't use exactly those words, but you know. So yeah, so this is and kind of natural, right? You can see why that would happen. I love talking with Ajahn Brahm about this, because Ajahn Brahm, he says, well, you know, when you become the Buddha, your mind is so peaceful that there's no inclination to do anything else. Why would you go and teach anyone? Yeah, you're kind of so stilled and so happy and peaceful. And then you need some kind of impetus to awaken the compassion in you. And then, according to the sutta, same sutta, the Brahma Sahampati, the famous god comes down and says, "Please teach." Did that actually happen? I don't know, but that's kind of what the sutta says, at least that sutta. There are other versions of that sutta which don't have that, so maybe that is a later addition, a bit unclear here. But regardless, this is that impetus. Maybe it was a person who came, yeah? Maybe it wasn't the god, who knows what actually happened. But then the compassion is awakened in the Buddha. Now the compassion is awakened. The compassion has not been there for 4 incalculable eons. Now, after you have found the solution, that is the right time for compassion to awaken, because now you know you can help people. Before that, you didn't know. It's the wrong time for compassion. And then the Buddha goes out and starts teaching, and people start to understand what he's talking about. And that is another kind of miracle. The fact that people understand is kind of extraordinary here. I'll come back to this later on when we talk about the Sangha later on, because it's also very interesting here. Anyway, that is the noble search for you. So now you have some idea about the Buddha, how he discovered what he discovered. Now we have one aspect of right view, the understanding the world. Now there is another aspect of right view which complements the understanding of the world. And that aspect of right view is the idea that there is a solution to the problem. So that aspect of the right view is understanding the triple gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Because that is what gives the mind a boost. Now we have seen all the depressing stuff. Now we want to focus on the positive side of things, that there actually is a solution to these things. This is the beautiful thing about Buddhism, is that you don't become like an existentialist. The famous French philosophers who said that life sucks, but they didn't have a solution. And if life sucks and you have no solution, it's terrible. But if life sucks and you have a solution, then okay, it's good. It's okay, it's satisfactory. So now we want to move towards that solution, and we want to see what it is about the triple gem, how to use these ideas to then build some uplift, some happiness, some joy, positive qualities in the mind, to balance out all the being face to face with reality can be too much sometimes. So you need that uplift at the same time. So this next sutta, I'm just going to start very gently now. We have a few minutes left just to kind of get started. This is called the Mahanama Sutta, which is with Mahanama. And this is the Anguttara Nikaya Numerical Discourse, the sixth chapter, sutta number 10. And just to give you a little bit of background about Mahanama, let me just read the very first paragraph here. At one time, the Buddha was staying in the land of the Sakyans near Kapilavatthu in the banyan tree monastery. Then Mahanama the Sakyan went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him. This is how it starts. So the Buddha is kind of visiting his extended family, if you like. This is the second clan, was the clan of the Buddha. And Mahanama was apparently his cousin or something like that. And Mahanama and Anuruddha, they were brothers. Anuruddha became a very famous monk for his divine eye, seeing all kinds of world, all kinds of things. And Mahanama was his brother. And the story about these two, and I love this little story, and some of you probably heard it before. I'll tell it again anyway, because it's kind of a nice little story. And so according to the story, this is found in the Vinaya Pitaka. So if you have only read suttas, you never read the Vinaya, you will have missed out on this story. And so the Buddha comes back to visit his family, all of his extended family, and then all the young men, and later on also the young women as well, but initially young men, because there weren't any bhikkhunis in the beginning, they become really inspired. Wow, look at what happened to our clansman, the Buddha, our cousin or whatever. Wow, this is really amazing. He's obviously a transformed person, probably very inspiring. And every family wants to have one son to go forth. You can imagine how difficult that is in those days. Yeah, so it's kind of really extraordinary. Every family wants to have a son go forth. So all of these people go forth. Yeah, Ananda goes forth, Bhaddya goes forth, Kimbila goes forth, Nandya. All of these were Sakyans, and then some dodgy characters go forth as well, like Devadatta. Yeah, Devadatta goes forth. That was not such a good idea, but anyway, that's what happened. And then you come to the family of Anuruddha and Mahanama. And then Mahanama, he goes to Anuruddha and he says to Anuruddha, well, look, all of these young men are going forth from all the various families in the Sakyan clan. What about us? One of us should go forth too. He says to his brother Anuruddha. And when Mahanama says that to Anuruddha, Anuruddha said, well, I can't deal with the ascetic life. I have been brought up with such comfort. I cannot deal with that hard life. So you go forth. I will stay in the household life. That's what he says, right? And the famous story of the nutty cakes, you probably heard Ajahn Brahm tell the story of the nutty cakes, right? That's from Anuruddha, because he was brought up with so much, he always had exactly what he wanted, yeah? And so one of the stories is like, whenever he wanted a cake, he would just go to his mother and say, oh, mom, please, can I have a cake? And every time he asked, his mother would give him a cake, yeah. Not sure if that was a good mother, but anyway, you're not supposed to give the child the cake every time, right? That's something not. But anyway, that's how the stories are never all that realistic. Yeah. And so one day there wasn't any cake. Yeah. So his mother says to Anuruddha, says, "Oh, nati Anuruddha," and he has never heard the word nati before. Nati means there is not. That's what it means in Pali. There is not. There isn't. And so he says, "Yes, please. I have one of those." That's what he says. He thinks it's a cake, yeah, a kind of cake, because he always gets a cake whenever he asks. So he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand there isn't. He had never heard the word there isn't before, yeah. This is kind of word that's been banished from his vocabulary. And so that is kind of how his upbringing was. Yeah, he always had whatever he wanted. He didn't understand anything about real life at all. And so then he says, okay, you go forth, Mahanama, I will stay in the household life. And Mahanama says, okay, very well, let me then instruct you in the duties of the household life. He goes, what? What are those duties? And Mahanama says, well, when the spring comes, you have to plow the fields, remove all the rocks from the fields. Then you have to make the furrows. Then you have to plant the seeds in the field. Then you have to irrigate the field, let the water in. And then you have to drain the field afterwards. And then when the weeds come up, you have to weed all the weeds because they are in the way of the crops. And then after weeding, you have to kind of allow everything to come up, and then you have to reap it. You have to harvest the field. And when it is harvested, you have to what is it called? You have to kind of get what is that called? You get the seeds out. Okay, my vocabulary is deserting me. So anyway, you have to do all of those things, like get the seed out, and you have to kind of winnow it and get all the rubbish out of the way. And then when all the seeds are kind of collected, you have to store them, and then you store them, and then when the next season comes, you take some of those seeds that you have stored, and you put them back in the field, and you repeat the process. And Anuruddha says, what? What do you mean? And Anuruddha said, well, and when does the work stop then? Says Anuruddha, right? He's always looking for when the work stops. And Mahanama says, it never stops. It goes on and on like this, year after year. And he says, while our fathers and forefathers were doing this work, they died in the middle of it. And then the next generation carried on. And then Anuruddha says, well, in that case, I will go forth, you stay in the home life. That's Anuruddha for you, real kind of scallywag. And he then becomes a great monk. It's one of those strange things. I don't know how someone like that can become a great monk. But anyway, that's what he does. He becomes a great monk, And he becomes the kind of number one with this kind of divine vision and all of these kind of things. It's kind of cute story. It probably didn't happen quite like that. But it's kind of one of those myths and legends that you find in the suttas. And it's kind of cute, so I kind of like it. So this is Anuruddha and Mahanama. Now, so Mahanama then ends up staying in the home life, but Mahanama is a very good householder. You can imagine the way he was dealing with his brother. It sounds a bit like Anuruddha was the younger brother, doesn't it? And Mahanama was the older one, was kind of... That's what it sounds like. You never know. Sometimes roles are inversed in life, but that sounds like a likely one. And so he is a very good householder, and he practices very well. And as we shall see in the sutta, he happens to be a stream enter, as a householder. Very difficult thing to achieve, because household life is not usually compatible with very deep insight. But if you have really, really powerful qualities, sometimes it happens. And even in the present world, you'd be surprised, there are some people who are extraordinarily powerful lay people who go very far. Not, I wouldn't say very often, but sometimes you meet people who are really extraordinary. Deep meditation, deep insight, all of those things. So it does happen in the present day as well. So if you're going to make, if you're going to live the lay life, make the most of it. And Mahanama was one of these people. And precisely because he was a stream enter, because he had this incredible, powerful faith in the Buddha, he would go to the Buddha and ask questions. And this is one of those suttas where he goes to the Buddha and asks the question, how should he live? Yeah, this is what this next sentence says. I'm just going to read this sentence out before I stop. And he says, Sir, or Venerable Sir, when a noble disciple has reached the fruit, this means you have become a stream enter, and understood the instruction. That also means you have understood, means you have understood fully, you're a stream enter. What kind of meditation do they frequently practice? In other words, what should I do? What kind of meditation should I do? And this is what we're going to talk about when we meet again this afternoon. How to gain that joy, that happiness of a stream enter, so we hopefully can move in that same direction as well. So that is all for this morning. So please carry on enjoying yourself. Have a wonderful lunch, and we'll see you back here again at 3 o'clock. Let's just pay respect to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha.